It's time to look at my hands again. Well, that hand, or rather finger. But before we look at this in more detail, I want to address some bit of feedback that I got. First bit of feedback was that there isn't enough energy in my videos. So I brought a bit of portable energy, a battery, just a button cell, just a small one. We don't want to go overboard, but it's going to live here so that we have more energy in the video. The next thing is that I should show the CAD drawings, and I will be doing that at the end of the video, unless editing me has a change of heart and puts it at the beginning, in which case you've already seen this and this intro is a bit awkward. But if you want to see it at the beginning of the video, leave a comment, or if I put it in the beginning and you want to see it at the end, leave a comment, and we'll fix it in the next one. This is how far we got last time. The distal phalanx connected to the middle phalanx via a screw. There's no way to actuate it, nothing exciting about it. We wanted to put a steel cable through here and actuate it via a Bowden mechanism, and that is the next thing we're going to look at. And this is what we have here. We see we have a steel cable running through a Teflon tube anchored to the middle phalanx and connected to the distal phalanx via a knot, I guess. If we pull on this end of the cable, let's get it all into view, then we can see that we can actually extend the finger. This is extension. Quick anatomy. I'll be throwing these in every now and then. But bending the finger is called flexion, and extending the finger is called extension. In this case, that's easy. That is the distal phalanx, middle phalanx, proximal phalanx. You can just remember it with proximal being close, distal being far away, looking from the base of your hand, just proximal close, middle, distal, far away. And the finger bones are called phalanx, or phalange if you're using the plural. So we can extend this finger, there's no flexion on this, but the steel cable is very stiff and bulky, and we can see this entire mechanism takes a lot of space, and I didn't like it. Another short anatomy interlude. I want to talk about the kinematics of our hand, or how it moves. So one important thing of our joints is that they're not stiff, they're actually flexible. And what I mean by that is, if I apply force here, you can see how my joints here give. All I'm doing is pulling downwards. But they're complying to the shape of my thumb here, which is a very good thing, because that allows us to grip things better, because we have more surface area. A steel cable does not flex. So if we had a motor that locks off here, for example, driving it the other way would be near impossible. And this brings me to the next prototype. I replaced the steel cable with a nylon thread. That is it. It still bends if we pull on it. We can still extend the finger. If I put some tension on it, which isn't that easy because nylon is quite slippy, we can push on it and it'll spring back. So we have the flexibility I was talking about, but we have a bit too much on it, of it. This barely takes any strength. Just using my pinky to demonstrate this doesn't take any strength at all, basically. Of course, I could double or triple up the line, which would then require more force to bend it. But I switched away from this material relatively quickly, but not in the next prototype, which is what we're going to look at next. Which brings me to the next experiment. As a reminder, this is what it looked before, this is how it looks now. So we moved away from modeling the finger dimension to modeling the finger bones themselves. And we were concerned with figuring out how to connect our tendons, the lines here, to our bones. And how to control them. So if, for example, I pull on this tendon, we'll see that the finger actually extends or flexes. It depends on, I'm looking like this way down. So this is very unhealthy hyperextension. If you ever manage to bend your finger that far back, go see an expert, please. The line on the other side is symmetric in this case. So if I pull on it, it'll bend. We've got the same thing going for the fingertip. These are the other lines. So if I pull on this one, which is the wrong one, if I pull on this one, then the fingertip will bend. And if I find the right one, if I pull on that one, it will apparently snap backwards a bit violently. But it works in general. One thing I've noted is to notice this joint is broken. As you can see, the nut is actually not captured. That is because I underestimate just how thin things look in the CAD drawings, or rather how thick things can look in the CAD drawings, but when you print it, it's basically paper thin. So I didn't quite like the flexibility and the joints. I didn't like a lot of things here, but I was satisfied that the rough idea can actually work. At this point, I also had to switch CAD programs because FreeCAD that I was using was kind of garbage. It's sad to say, but what do you do about it? So I switched to FreeCAD and I was trying to fix the joint. So I'm just printing a bunch of different joint sizes with configurations until I got one that actually worked, where I had enough strength in the wall to actually capture the nut without it breaking, because when you insert the nut, it applies pressure outwards, and a free rotating joint here. That's really all to say about this. Next was to get back to kind of where I was by adding the proximal phalanx as well. And an exciting change here, I don't know if this is quite easy to see, there's a nub here. And there is, actually let me just unscrew this. So if we look at this, we can see it's not a perfect round. There's a nub here and a nub here. And these, there's the same thing going on with this one, which is easier to see. These, if you bend the finger, will stop it from over bending. And I stopped at 10 degrees, and that's basically just measured on my own finger. This is roughly the angle that my finger takes. That's it. That's the only reason for it. And it stops... this one stops at 110 degrees, and so does this one downwards. Again, this is roughly the angle my finger makes. And for that, we had to carve in here, and we'll see that in CAD a bit better, a hole into which this can nestle into, which was a lot harder to do than I want to admit. But my CAD skills are getting better. Let me just reassemble this quickly. This is the top side. And I'm looking through the camera, so I'm seeing the exact same thing you see, except that my motor skills are a bit off. So we can see that this stops at this angle and this stops at this angle. So now that I've got the stops in there, I was trying to figure out how to do the pulley system, and I wanted to improve also the angles, because if you are in flexion extending it, if you're pulling from here, you're pulling really over the edge here. So extending this a bit upwards gives us a bit better angle, especially with the nub here. But once the nub is gone, here we have a much better angle to pull up. I may need to revisit this a bit. We see we have tiny tubes here, which I don't know if you can see this, but there are actually holes in them, and this thing also has tiny holes in it for wiring the cable. Why are they that thin, even though my nylon thread here, this one, is clearly thicker than them? That is because I had a bit of a thought and I switched over to a Dyneema thread. This is fishing line, actually. So why Dyneema? Dyneema is quite strong. It has a lot of tensile strength. It's obviously flexible and it's thin. That's about it. Wait, no, it has the same friction coefficient as Teflon, so it's very slippy as well. Now, I don't know what the strength of this line is. It's 0.5 millimeter in diameter, not radius. And there's apparently 350 meters of it here, but it says 80 kilograms, which I don't know what that means. It's not breaking strength, because breaking strength is not a mass, it's a force. Then it should be kilogram seconds. Or it's not the weight of it, because that's not 80 kilograms, so I'm not sure what it is. I'm going to assume it's breaking strength, because 1 kilonewton, which is roughly 80 kilograms, actually it's more than 80 kilograms, looks about right for a thread this thin. But yeah, so this is the thread I'm using now, and this thread actually does fit into these lines here. I actually got it fiddled into one of them at some point of time, but it was too fiddly, so I gave up on that. Which gets us to the next two prototypes, actually, because the metacarpal here, this joint here is, this happened in 2 iterations. So we've got a much bigger hole here now. If we get it to focus. Just a second. Well, good enough, I guess. So we've got a much bigger hole here, and we can see the lines run pretty freely through it. And we've got 4 of them around a bone that allows us to attach to them the line without attaching it through here to give us this angle here. I think 2, I could get away with just 2, but I didn't want this to pinch that one. So this one runs underneath this and it can't get over it. Of course, they can still pinch each other in here, which is a problem. So I may want to have separate lines for them, separate guides for them. But we have the hyperextension, so this is the top of the hyperextension protection in here. They're still in. You can see the nub here. And there's enough clearance for it to rotate underneath the guide. I'm just showing it off because I'm kind of proud that my cut skills are getting better. They're not that great, but better than before. And so the way they're fastened is always tied through the side ones and then just with a sliding knot attached. Now, to demonstrate that this actually moves, so first of all we notice this moves really smoothly, which is really nice. It took quite a bit of fiddling. So if I pull on this line here, we can see we can extend the finger with very little force, even from a fully flexed position. This is really nice smooth motion. If we find the this is the one. If we find the flexor that is attached to the middle phalanx here, we can also bend it really easily. Next we have the fingertip, the distal phalanx, that can be bent with this one. And I need to hold on to the middle phalanx to bend the fingertip the other way, because obviously, if I pull on this, I'm also pulling on the middle phalanx, because the angles sometimes will do that. That's okay. It just means that if you want to only actuate one, you need to pull on the other cable, which isn't actually really hard to do because I don't know which one I'm pulling on here. So this gives us full motion on the finger, and we can then add some paneling around it to give it friction to grab onto things. Maybe sink the lines into the plastic so that it takes up less bulk. I don't know yet. And we've got a double hinge joint here for the metacarpophalangeal joint, which is this one, the knuckle, which gives us adduction and abduction. Oh, so another short anatomy lesson. Abduction is the motion away from the middle line. In the case of a hand, the middle line is your middle finger. So this is abducting the index finger. This is adducting the middle finger. So the index finger, it's moving it back towards the center line. So I'm just showing that this joint is capable of adduction and abduction. It's obviously also capable of flexion and extension, even extension the other way. So we need two axes, and this gives us the adduction and abduction, and this gives us flexion and extension. Now there's another motion our hand can do, and that is this cup motion here. That doesn't happen in this joint though, this happens in the metacarpus. So there is another long bone that goes roughly to here for every finger, and the actual wrist bones are just here. These two are fixed in relation to the wrist bone, so they don't actually move. So when you make a cup motion like this, these two stay in place, and this one, that one, and the thumb go into this cup motion here. So that's going to be handled at the other end of this joint. I'm not entirely certain how far or how accurate I'm going to model all of it, and just to show that this is, anatomically correctly sized, we can see that if I line this up with my joints, that this bends here, this joint fits into here, and the knuckle is actually deeper than it seems, but it also bends around my knuckle. Obviously, this joint has a lot of width, or length, depending on which way you look around it, because it has two axes here, and the actual joint here is compactor. That's the problem with working with stiff materials instead of flexible materials, because the way our joints work in our hands is completely different from this. So this will not be anatomically correct. It will just mimic the motion, which is my goal. Maybe in a version 2, I'll try replacing this with actual flexible joints and get much closer to an anatomically correct hand. But this is as far as I got. Next steps are actually controlling these lines with motors and getting the wrist, then the other fingers attached. The thumb is an entire thing I don't want to go into right now, but it's not like any other finger, if we even start at it not even having a middle phalanx. The pinky is also a bit different, so is the index finger, and I guess no finger is kind of quite alike. But these two are the most similar to each other, except that the metacarpal here is fixed and this one isn't. These have extra muscles, these two, or rather these three have extra muscles, and the range of motion on the thumb is obviously completely different. Anyway, just a distraction. Right, so let's go and look at the cut drawings. And here are my cut drawings. As you can see, they're multicolored because it makes it
easier to see. And I did not bother modeling the screws, and I will not do that. Unless I'm lying, in which case I will. I don't know yet. But right now I don't want to. So I've got a master table of different measurements. These are the bones, the distal phalanx, middle phalanx, proximal phalanx, metacarpal. The 2 stands for the index finger, because we start counting at the thumb. This is fingertip, middle of the finger, base of the finger, and the thing in your inside of your hand, going to the wrist. Then this is just a guesstimate roughly on the ratio of the phalanx width to the phalanx length, which is about a quarter. I'm not sure if it's completely accurate, but it seems more or less accurate. The rest here is not that interesting. They're just there to make sure everything works. So I've got my attachment points here. Like I said, I might sink them into the actual things, maybe make crisscross holes so you can just type through it to gain save a bit of bulk. We've got the guide channels here, which are much easier to see, that we can actually guide our rope through it. We've got the stops here, which I talked about. So if I actually rotate this joint, we can see it stops here. This is constrained to that. And on the bottom side, if we rotate it the 110 degrees, we see it stops there as well. The reason you see a bit of a gap is because we need a bit of margin. Anytime you do anything like this, you need a bit of margin, because in reality, measurements aren't perfect, and there's going to be a bit variation. And you want this to actually rotate, so you need extra space. Go back. So, sorry, I keep accidentally orbiting, because the controls for orbiting in Fusion are the controls for panning in Blender, and I'm used to Blender. So everything is basically the same. Let me hide the distal and the proximal. They've got the base with the attachment points, the front-facing joint with the guide, and nut capture as well as screw head. And the back of it has the limiting nub on it. It's got 2 of them. This one kind of just merges into it, but it got 2 of the 2 stops, and is a bit thinner. The proximal here just connects into it as such. There isn't really much anything exciting about it, but we see the cutout we had to do, because if we rotate this, we see that this would otherwise collide if I wanted to get the same 110 degrees. So I just cut that out. We have our double joint here, or double 2-axis hinge joint. We can rotate around this axis, and we can rotate around that axis. Now, it's been a bit of a learning curve of getting used to Fusion. It's not perfect, there's a lot of jank, and I'm still trying to learn and fiddle with it. But it's been a much better experience than FreeCAD. And as long as I don't make money off YouTube, this is perfectly fine. If I do, then I need to figure out what to do, because the subscriptions to Fusion are actually expensive. Anyway, not that it matters. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. Feel free to join my Discord and have discussions about it. Obviously, if you have any interesting ideas, I might consider them. And see you again soon.